This happened the Halloween I was 10 years old and my sister was 7. We'd already finished trick-or-treating and were back home enjoying our haul of candy. The doorbell rings, and our mom answers to find a lone trick-or-treater dressed as a gorilla. My mom gives them candy, but the gorilla tries to grab the bowl and get more. My mom yells at them to go away before closing the door in their face. A couple minutes later, that same gorilla shows up at our side door and proceeds to start knocking very aggressively. I was getting scared at this point because this obviously isn't normal behavior. My mom angrily goes to the side door to tell the gorilla to leave. She cracks it open slightly, but the gorilla pushes past her and enters the house. It then steps into the kitchen where my sister and I were. Cue the shrieking. I ran away from the gorilla into the living room and threw myself into the fetal position on the couch. My sister joined me, and we lay there screaming hysterically and probably in some kind of shock. My mother throws herself over us yelling, "My babies, my babies!" over and over while the gorilla keeps grunting and trying to pull Mom off to get to us. It was terrifying. Suddenly, the gorilla just starts laughing, and it turns out it was my grandmother. She and my mom decided to play this nasty little trick on us. This still makes my mother laugh almost 40 years later. We ended up getting our revenge on my mom the following Halloween. My mom had converted our basement guest bedroom into her own personal arts and crafts room. My best friend's dad had this high-end set of walkie-talkies. So we took one and hid it in the closet of Mom's craft room and waited until she was down there working on Halloween costumes. We holed up in my room with my younger sister, making subtle clicking noises through the walkie, often enough to get Mom's attention and annoy her, but not enough to give away the walkie's location. I even went downstairs to ask my mom about dinner and to get a closer look. It was perfect. She'd stop working to listen. Then when nothing happened, she'd go back to working, only to immediately hear another clicking sound. She asked me about the noises, and it took all I had to keep from laughing when I told her I had no idea what those could be. I went back upstairs and decided it was time for the grand finale. We mouthed a countdown, and then all three of us let out a banshee scream right into the walkie. A minute later, Mom came upstairs with the walkie-talkie in hand and a look on her face that was a combination of both annoyance and amusement. We busted out into laughter, letting her know that this was our gorilla retribution. Mom was a good sport about it, admitting to our cleverness and how she almost peed her pants when we all screamed. Years ago, when I was in college, a group of friends and I went to this Halloween party/concert hosted by a local radio station. It was downtown in the city at this outdoor park, and since we planned on drinking that night a lot, we decided to take the commuter train into the city instead of drive ourselves. We apparently weren't the only ones with this idea, as the train was filled with people dressed up in costumes. At one of the stops, a group of college girls gets on, and one of them is dressed as Seven of Nine from Star Trek Voyager. This girl was petite and looked younger than she was. She was probably 19, but could have passed for 13. Not long into the ride, these two fat guys dressed as Jedi behind us start mocking her for not having the goods to fill out her costume. Freaking gross. My friend, a big burly guy dressed as Michael Myers, turns around, looks them up and down, and starts heckling them for being fat Jedi, saying things like, "Can't you use the Force to put the damn M&Ms down? The pizza's calling you to the dark side. Do you have to use the Force to get your fat asses into those robes? Those aren't even Jedi robes, those are bathrobes," and many more insults hurled at these creeps. Everyone in the train car was cracking up, and when we all got off at the downtown stop, the girl had a great big grin on her face. She turned around and high-fived my friend on her way off the train. The fat Jedi got off the train as fast as they could and refused to even look at my friend. We saw them again at the party, and they just stared at the ground as we walked past each other. Years ago, a half dozen of us went to the local bar for its annual Halloween bash. It was the only small bar in a small town. Hardly anyone dressed up. My friend Paul, thinking we were all dressing up too, decided to go as a lit joint. He had torn some white sheets into strips and wrapped himself a little too tightly head to toe. His face and hair were dyed red. Paul was in it to win it. Getting him there was comical enough. It took 4 guys to lay him in the back of the pickup truck, 2 to prop him up and carry him by his elbows up the front steps into the bar, which he waddled into, penguin style. With little competition, Paul won. The DJ was trying to yank his arm up in victory. First prize goes to the tampon. We all nearly pissed ourselves as Paul frantically and unsuccessfully tried raising his arm high enough to grab the mic. I'm a joint! A joint! Not a fucking tampon. Of course he toppled over, causing more hysterics. Flat on his back and kicking to unravel himself, Paul was still shouting, I'm a joint, goddammit! The drunken crowd fist-pumping as they chanted, Tampon! Tampon! Paul sulked all the way home, and 1 decade and many jokes later, he's still known by his nickname, Playtex. So, back in 2011, I was majoring in theater arts at the local college and was in the theatrical makeup class. It was the only class I had on Fridays, and I frequently came home in whatever makeup I had done that day in class to show my dad. It was the week of Halloween, and our teacher was teaching us bloodies, which is the nickname for gore makeup, and my horror-obsessed haunted house working, boasting self was going wild. While most of the other students did a burn, a few bruises, maybe a gash on the arm or something minimal, I made myself look like roadkill that also got mauled by a bear. It was a lot. Enough to get me some concerned looks from everyone, including a campus cop when I was leaving. I went home all covered in fake blood, looking like hell, and I loved it. My dad told me to keep it on so my niece and nephews could see when they got there after school. Like my dad, they also loved seeing my makeup creations. So around 3 p.m., I hear a knock at the door. Well, I decided to answer like a zombie to make them laugh. I now realize that I probably should have checked the window first to make sure it was them. I answer the door slowly, dragging a foot, moaning, brains, only to see 2 Jehovah's Witnesses go green and absolutely bolt back to the sidewalk. I literally was still processing what had just happened as they ran off around the corner, just as my brother showed up with his kids. To this day, my dad says he sees them actively avoid our door, and once heard them refer to it as the home of the devil.